nothing to hold while we let it go. We were empty, we were hollow. Shine with everything we were living for. And the sea so like some picture show. Cross-eyed. We were running through the autumn leaves. Couple kids just wearing out their jeans. Running Mary, she's our autumn queen. Watch her smoking cigarettes on the street. Down she goes, she blows, cross-eyed. Down she goes, she blows, cross-eyed. Yeah, there's lights up in the north. I'm wondering where you are. Now it's white snow. Watch the evening glow. Cross-eyed. Summer days are just a magazine, a magazine, a magazine. Cutting grass for gasoline, so I can see it soon. packed up the dust of all that I own. Handkerchief hung from a pole. I rolled out the day that the apples fell. Woke you up, poetry and stone, ragged in the bones, strewn around the room. I recall another hazy May, take a round in the rain, gone hungry for the wind. Here's a part I just lose everything, and I cracked a spark just to hear you sing, sing. Took it out, papers in the trash, old among the cans, this golden love gone bad. Shined it up, aiming at the sun, just a light year from us. Hop a cab right and we're off. All the ravens came along to play the simple notes you sang just went astray. Everything was up, it's coming down. Everything was up, it's coming down. Coming down. Coming down. tail lights burn red. You're hotter than hell, and I've been long gone, couldn't you tell? And the smoke in the air, you couldn't hide my shame. Saw it lit up on that silver screen. And that full-bellied moon just shining on me. Yeah, she pulls on this heart like she pulls on the sea. Your beauty left me broke and hungry. Left me begging to the birds for a bomber offering. Left me saying nothing, nothing, like I always say. And that full-bellied moon, she's a shining on me. Yeah, she pulls on this heart like she pulls on the sea. Yeah, she's shining on me. Well, those broken-hearted lovers, they got nothing on me.
Well, good evening. This is pretty early on Ketchum time to get started, but it looks like we have a good crowd. Thank you for generously giving your time to join us tonight. My name is Megan Tanis, and I am the Chief Development Officer of the St. Luke's Wood River Foundation. And it is my pleasure, thank you, to welcome you to our annual Health and Wellbeing Speaker Series tonight, featuring Lisa Genova. This talk is made possible by an anonymous family who has had a vision for several years to bring the community together to hear from a national health expert. And we thank them for making this a free opportunity for all of us. I want to thank so many of you who have generously given to the foundation to support the hospital and the health of our community for so many years. Your generosity is really the reason that all of us are able to enjoy the superior medical care that we do in our community. I'm pleased to share that your generosity is hard at work, helping to build 12 new homes for our hospital staff. We hope to ensure that our healthcare workforce lives in our community and is here to take care of all of us for years to come. So we finished 4 in Quigley Farms, and we have 8 homes under construction that should be finished by this time next year. We also just invested in a new nuclear medicine machine. It's the first of its kind in Idaho and will help expand imaging care for all of us. We've added new cardiac equipment, funded staff education and training, and several patient assistance programs. Generosity really is key to our ability to attract exceptional talent, including physicians and clinical staff. I'd like to thank our St. Luke's team, many of whom are here tonight, and also thank you to the St. Luke's Wood River Foundation Board, whose leadership is deeply appreciated. And I would be remiss if I also didn't thank my team and Betsy Mullins, who orchestrated tonight's event. And it is in this spirit of gratitude that I also thank Lisa for coming. She shared with me that she has 6 speaking events this year, and we're truly grateful that she chose to speak in our community. Lisa is a Harvard-trained neuroscientist and New York Times bestselling author. Inspired by neuroscience and the human spirit, her best-selling work includes Still Alice, which was made into an Oscar-winning film, and her newest book, Remember, The Science of Memory and the Art of Forgetting. We'll all now know why we forget our keys. Lisa is an acclaimed storyteller whose first TED Talk, What You Can Do to Prevent Alzheimer's, has over 8 million views. She comes to us during a pivotal time in Alzheimer's research and treatment. I hope you were inspired by her this evening and her work to connect neuroscience and the human spirit. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Lisa Genova.
Thank you, my dear. I like the art of forgiving. That could be a new book. Thank you, Megan and Betsy, and everyone from the St. Luke's Wood River Foundation for bringing me here. What a great organization doing good in the world. So I'm very happy to be in Idaho. I've not been here before, and I hiked Adams Gulch today before coming here with you. So amazing. Flowers and butterflies, and oh my God, the views. All right, so thank you for joining me today. We're gonna have fun, and this is going to be memorable for you. Let's start with a little memory quiz, shall we? Okay, thinking about the past week, did any of you forget where you put your phone? Did any of you have a word stuck on the tip of your tongue? You couldn't remember the name of an actor or a TV show a friend recommended? Okay. Did any of you forget to pick up something at the grocery store you meant to buy? I do that all the time. Did any of you walk into a room and think, why am I in here? Okay. Did any of you forget any of the passwords to any of your online accounts? Oh my God. Can you tell me everyone you texted and everyone who texted you 2 days ago? Right. What did you have for lunch last Thursday? All right. So I'm guessing that I made a lot of you, maybe all of you, slightly uncomfortable here. I mean, you were laughing, but there was a little bit of nervousness to that. But I want to reassure you, in all of these examples, what you couldn't remember is totally normal. But I'm also betting that many or most of you are carrying this false belief that memory is supposed to be perfect and that you're supposed to remember everything. And so when you forget anything, you think it's a sign of weakness, impairment, aging, or maybe even Alzheimer's. When you forget something, you don't feel good about yourself, right? You might feel embarrassed or shamed or worried, anxious, fearful. This is not a good time when we forget things. Many of you have a parent, a grandparent, or a spouse who had or has dementia, so you've experienced the heartache and the difficulty of loving someone who's had profound memory loss. So when you can't remember the name of the actress in that movie about Alzheimer's, you worry that this might be the beginning of Alzheimer's in you. But here's what I want you to know. Our brains, our human brains, were not designed to remember people's names, to do something later, or to catalog everything we encounter. These imperfections are simply the factory settings. There is a reason why you can remember all the words to Hey Jude by the Beatles and forget why you walked into your living room. Or you can still remember that Hamlet soliloquy you memorized in 10th grade, but forget what your spouse told you 5 minutes ago. So today I want to help shatter this false belief that we're supposed to remember everything. I want to show you how memory works. How do we remember, and why do we forget? And I want to show you how forgetting is a normal part of being human. Okay, so let's just start at the beginning. What even is a memory? Well, the creation of a memory takes place in 4 basic steps. Number 1, your brain takes in all the sights, the sounds, the smells, the taste, the emotion and meaning of what you perceive and pay attention to, and translates all of that into neurological language. Basically, the information gets into your brain. Next, your brain then weaves all of this separate information, this distinct and disparate information into a neural circuit. It connects that information together. Number 3, through lasting alterations in neural chemistry and neural architecture, this neural circuit becomes stable over time. And then number 4, sometime later, so tomorrow, next week, next year, 30 years from now, if this neural circuit is activated, you can retrieve that woven information. You remember. All right, so let's do an example. So let's say I'm remembering the time that I hiked Jenny Lake in Wyoming with my 2 younger kids. So I remember that it was a really hot day that day, but the air felt so refreshingly cool at Hidden Falls. I remember eating a delicious tuna sandwich for lunch, and I remember I hadn't had a tuna fish sandwich in years. So I was eating this tuna sandwich, and we were overlooking the view at Inspiration Point. Gorgeous. A chipmunk came up to us and surprised us by stealing my daughter's snack right out of her hand and eating it. We saw a moose that day. I'd never seen a moose before. And then I remember embarrassing my son by singing songs from The Sound of Music, inspired by the peaks of the Grand Tetons. Okay, so a moose has nothing to do with The Sound of Music, a chipmunk, a tuna fish sandwich, or the cool air on my skin at Hidden Falls, unless those fleeting, separate experiences become linked together in my brain. So why can I remember that hike at Jenny Lake and not, for example, the week after that trip, when I was back home in Massachusetts, a more recent time period? Well, it turns out that memory is quite economical. Our brains have evolved to remember what is meaningful, emotional, surprising, new, and what we repeat and practice. Our brains forget what isn't. Turns out that our day-to-day lives are spent doing routine, habitual things. Think about what we do day to day, right? So what do? We get up, we shower, we get dressed, we brush our teeth, we drink coffee, we have some meals, commute to work maybe, run some errands, type emails, spend time on social media, watch TV, and go to bed. Day after day after day, right? Not so meaningful, emotional, surprising, or new. Our day-to-day lives are same old, especially during the pandemic, right? Remember, like Tuesdays felt like Saturday, and every day was essentially the same? Sameness is the kiss of death to memory. This is why, did any of you feel sort of cognitively foggy during or after the pandemic? I mean, unless you were a healthcare worker, and there might be some of you here whose lives were very unusual during that time period, or if you unfortunately lost someone close to you during that time period, if you were just home isolating, the menu of choices of possible life experiences shrunk, and so our day-to-day lives weren't very memorable. So I tell folks this is like the most memorable year that you won't remember. Yeah, so this is why I could remember that hike at Jenny Lake so well. We tend to remember vacations because vacations are not same old, same old. You're taking in new sights, new experiences you've never had before. A moose. Our brains are great at remembering things that are new. We also tend to take a lot of pictures when we're on vacation. And these photos give us opportunities to revisit and reminisce about what happened. And when we do this, we are repeatedly activating the neural circuits of those memories, making them stronger. But our day-to-day lives don't contain the new extraordinary experiences worth retelling that vacations are so full of. So there are no animals that I've never seen before in my backyard. And I don't really feel like taking a picture of my sink full of dirty dishes, right? Most of what we experience today will be forgotten by tomorrow. Added up, this means we actually don't remember most of our own lives. But this is okay. It's okay if we don't remember the details of every morning cup of coffee, right? Like most of the time, forgetting isn't actually a problem to solve. Now, you'd probably all agree that forgetting the details of folding last week's laundry, not such a big deal. But our brains also forget plenty of things that we think are a big deal. So like I would very much like to remember to buy more toilet paper, where I put my glasses, to schedule my son's dentist appointment, and what you just said. These things matter to me. So in these instances, our brains can forget not because it's efficient for them to do so, but because we haven't supplied our brains with the right kinds of input needed for memory creation and retrieval. So let's go over 4 kinds of forgetting and why they're totally normal. And I'm telling you, I'm really hopeful this is going to change your lives, and you can let me know when we're done. Okay, number 1, most common kind of forgetting that's totally normal. Where did I put my phone, my keys, my glasses, my car? This happen to everybody on a kind of daily basis? Okay. So the first necessary ingredient in creating a memory that's going to last longer than this present moment is attention. Okay? Your brain is not a video camera recording a constant stream of every sight and sound you're exposed to. You can only remember what you pay attention to. And this is why so many of our things go missing. Not because we're about to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's, folks. It's because we're not paying attention. Let me give you a couple of examples. A few years back, I gave a talk in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I parked my car in a garage just a couple of blocks away from the venue, got out, went to the venue, gave my talk, 1-hour talk, signed some books, and then walked back to the garage. And I could not remember where I parked. I thought I had parked on level 4, but maybe it was 3 or 5. I was like walking up and down the ramps, right? Like pressing the car remote, hoping to see the flashing lights or hear the beep, beep. I was just about convinced that it had been stolen when I finally found it exactly where I parked it. So I wanted to blame this whole maddening experience on my memory, but the neuroscientist in me knew better. I couldn't find my car not because I have a terrible memory, amnesia, dementia, or Alzheimer's. I couldn't find my car because I never paid attention to where I parked it in the first place. Okay? So it's because the first necessary ingredient in creating a memory is attention, and because I hurried off to give the talk without paying attention to where I parked it, I never created a memory of that parking space in the first place. So not remembering where you parked because you didn't pay attention is normal and different than what happens if you have Alzheimer's. So if you have Alzheimer's, let's say you park in a parking lot, a garage for a mall, and then maybe it's early enough in your Alzheimer's you're still able to drive, or maybe someone drove you there. So you park in the garage, you go to the mall, you shop for an hour, and then you come back out. You're not wondering if you parked on level 3 or level 4. You're thinking, how did I get here? Or you're standing in front of your car and you don't recognize it as yours. It's very different. Here's another example. So I often drive from Boston to Cape Cod. I live on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. And about an hour into this trip, I crossed the Sagamore Bridge. This is a really big 4-lane, can't miss it structure. And then about 10 miles and 10 minutes later, I'll often wonder, wait, where am I? Did I already go over the bridge? Right? Does this ever happen to you? You're driving a stretch of road and you're like, where am I? So it's like, what happened here? Why can't I remember going over the bridge? I had my eyes open while I was driving. The visual information made its way into my brain. And I'm back here. You actually don't see in your eyes, folks. You know, so you see in the back of your head. That's your occipital cortex. That's where vision is processed. So the visual information, the bridge went into my brain, and I remembered how to drive. I stayed in my lane and I didn't crash the car, so that worked. And I'm not asking my brain to remember something from 30 years ago. This happened 10 minutes ago. Why can't I remember going over the bridge? Well, I can't remember going over the bridge because this memory was never created in the first place. It's not enough for my senses to perceive information. My brain can't and won't consolidate any sensory information into a lasting memory without the neural input of attention. So because I've gone over this bridge countless times, so it wasn't meaningful, emotional, surprising, or new for me, and because I was probably lost in thought or listening to an audiobook, so my attention was pulled elsewhere, the experience of driving over it, out of my brain within seconds, gone without a trace. So the next time you're driving your car and you suddenly realize that you had no memory of the trip so far, right? Think to yourself like, well, was I paying attention? Am I distracted? Once you bring your attention back online, do you recognize where you are? If you have Alzheimer's, you can be giving all of your attention to where you are, and you still might not recognize it, even if you're in a familiar neighborhood. Okay, so the number one reason for forgetting what someone just said, the name of a person you just met, where you put your phone, your keys, your glasses, your car, and whether you just drove over a really big bridge, is lack of attention. So you can't remember what's right in front of you if you don't pay attention to it. So if you want a better memory for where you put your things and what just happened, we've got to slow down. Got to get present. We got to stop multitasking. Multitasking is bad for your memory, right? You got to pay attention, be present, slow down, and that will help you give the attention that's needed. So I even say it out loud. If I'm putting my keys down on the counter or my phone down, I'm putting my phone on the kitchen counter, and then you walk away, right? So now my brain's heard it, my eyes have seen it, I gave it its moment. Try it, I think it'll help. All right, second most common kind of forgetting. That's totally normal. What's his name? Okay. So one day I was trying to come up with the name of the actor who played Tony Soprano in the HBO series The Sopranos. I knew his name, but I could not for the life of me come up with it. I eventually gave up and Googled it. Actor who played Tony Soprano. James Gandolfini, yes, that's it. So blocking on a word, it's also called tip of the tongue. It's one of the most common experiences of memory retrieval failure. You're trying to come up with a word, and it's most often a proper noun. So it's a person's name, a movie title, a city, a book title. And you know this word, but you cannot for the life of you retrieve it on demand. Why does this happen to us? Well, blocking on a word happens when there's only partial or weak activation of the neurons that link up to the word you're looking for. And proper nouns are particularly tricky to reach. You can think of proper nouns as living in neurological cul-de-sacs. Everybody giggles on that one, I don't know why. Neurological cul-de-sacs. So ultimately, there's only one road that leads into that address you're looking for. Unlike common nouns, which you can imagine living on Main Street, where there's hundreds of ways in and out to get to it. In psychology, this phenomenon is known as the capital B Baker, small b Baker paradox. So capital B Baker is, Mr. Baker, a person's name, Mr. Baker, is an abstract concept, really. It's a word not associated with anything. It lives in the cul-de-sac. But Baker, small b Baker, as an occupation, has lots of neural roads that lead to it, right? Lots of associations you can think of, a white hat and an apron and a rolling pin and apple pie and cookies and on and on and on. So there's lots of ways to access baker as an occupation, but baker as a person's name is really difficult to get to, and so that's why they often get stuck on the tip of our tongue. So when we're in this uncomfortable state, and it is uncomfortable, right? When we're in this uncomfortable state, we often come up with a loosely related word, something similar in sound or meaning. These obliquely related words are rather unfortunately called the ugly sisters of the target. I know. We need to revisit this. And even more unfortunately, zeroing in on an ugly sister will only make the situation worse. These decoys lure your brain activity down neural pathways that lead to them and not to the word you're looking for. So now, whenever you try to come up with the word in question, all you can come up with is the ugly sister. Let me give you an example. One time I said to a friend, "What's the name of that famous surfer? Lance?" "No, it's not Lance." Now, he knew who I was talking about, but he couldn't come up with it either. We were both stumped. It turns out me blurting out the wrong name sent both of our brains to Lance Armstrong, the cyclist, and in this case, the ugly sister. So now we were stuck in the wrong neural neighborhood and couldn't get out. The ugly sister also explains this phenomenon. Much later, when you've stopped trying, right? You're driving your car, you're in the shower, and it's Laird Hamilton. Yes, that's it. Why does that happen? Well, by calling off the hunt, your brain can stop perseverating on the ugly sister in the wrong neural neighborhood, giving the correct set of neurons a chance to be activated. Okay, so tip of the tongue blocking on a word is totally normal and does not mean you have Alzheimer's, okay? But to be fair, failure to retrieve words is one of the first and most common symptoms of having Alzheimer's. So how can you know if what you're experiencing is a normal tip of the tongue or an early sign of dementia? Well, if it's Alzheimer's, you're going to be blocking on dozens of words a day. And they're not just the proper nouns. They're not primarily proper nouns. They'll be more often common nouns. So it'll be like spoon, bicycle, telephone, bed. If you know someone with Alzheimer's, you're experiencing this tip of the tongue all day long, it can feel like an ongoing game of charades. And so when this happens dozens of times a day, this isn't just like a relatable inconvenience. This is now very disruptive memory loss. Okay, so, and I get that it's frustrating, but it's frustrating at every age, or actually, it happens at every age. It's less frustrating when you're younger. So young people tend not to sweat it. So 25-year-olds experience several tip of the tongues a week. But it doesn't really register with them, in part because old age, memory loss, Alzheimer's are nowhere on their radars. And unlike their parents, they don't hesitate in outsourcing the job to their smartphones. So many of you I know are worried that if you use Google to look up your blocked words, you think you're contributing to the problem and are probably making your memory worse, right? You think that Google is a high-tech crutch. It's going to give you something called digital amnesia. Nope, this is not so. This is a myth. Okay, so I just helped you, yes. Googling who played Tony Soprano on The Sopranos does not weaken my memory's ability whatsoever. Likewise, me deciding that I need to suffer through the mental pain and come up with it on my own doesn't make my memory any better. And I don't get any trophies for doing that either. So you don't have to be a memory martyr, people. Having a word stuck on the tip of your tongue is a normal glitch in memory retrieval. It's just a byproduct of how our brains are organized. It's in that cul-de-sac. I should also mention that you might say, well, yeah, 25-year-olds experience it, but I know I'm experiencing it more now that I'm 55, 65, 75. And that's true, but that just has to do with slower processing speeds as we age, which is unfortunate, but also normal, okay? So we don't have to think that there's something wrong there. Normal glitch in memory retrieval. So you have my permission to Google these words when it happens, okay? And you can be done with it. All right. Third most common kind of forgetting that's totally normal. Okay, so I need to remember to buy more toothpaste, take out the trash, move the laundry from the washer to the dryer. That one gets me a lot. Pick up the dry cleaning, pick up my daughter at 3:30, and attend a 4 o'clock Zoom meeting. This is called your prospective memory. Prospective memory is your brain's to-do list. This is a memory for a future time and place, and it is fraught with forgetting. Unless the right cue is available at the right time in the right place, we forget what we intend to do a lot, and it's normal. Marketing companies take advantage of our prospective memory failures all the time. How many of you have ever signed up for an online exercise program or downloaded an app or signed up for some free 30-day trial, fully intending to unsubscribe if you don't use or like it? And then what happened? You get your credit card statement and you see you've been charged $99 for the year because you forgot to unsubscribe. Well, maybe you're thinking, maybe prospective memories are vulnerable and unreliable for the little things that aren't life and death, right? Like the online exercise program, like, okay. But maybe they'd kick in and I'd remember to remember if it was crucially important. Okay, are prospective memories reliable for life and death kind of tasks? Nope, they are unreliable no matter the brains, no matter the stakes. Let me give you 2 hopefully memorable examples. Yo-Yo Ma, the world's most famous cellist, once climbed into a New York City cab after rehearsal, rode about 20 blocks to the Peninsula Hotel, paid the fare, and got out without his most prized possession, his $2.5 million cello. He forgot to remember to get it out of the trunk of the cab. Here's another one. Between 2005 and 2013, 772 surgical instruments were left inside the bodies of patients. Yeah, these very smart surgeons forgot to remember to remove them before closing up the patient's bodies. Yeah, so prospective memory is terrible no matter who you are, which is why it's a perfectly valid strategy to outsource the job. Don't rely on your brains for what you plan to do later. Write it down, people. Use to-do lists, checklists, put it in your calendar, use alerts and pillboxes. This is not cheating. This is good practice, okay? Our brains are not designed to remember our future selves. So if you need one more memorable example, pilots do not rely on their brains and their unreliable prospective memories to remember to lower the wheels of the plane before landing. Thankfully, they use checklists, and surgeons use them now too, which is good. So don't trust that you'll remember to do later what you plan now. You probably won't, or you might not. I mean, maybe you will. You're like, oh, I remember the 3 things I need on my grocery list. You might not. I do that one all the time. Just write it down. This isn't cheating. This is good practice. This is how we should all do. Future memory should be written down. All right. The 4th most common kind of forgetting, which is totally normal. Why did I come in this room? Okay. So I usually read before going to bed. One night, I was all ready to snuggle into the next chapter of the book I was reading in my bedroom when I realized that I didn't have my reading glasses. 52, I can't see a thing without them now. So I'm like, all right, I think I left them in the kitchen. So I walk downstairs, I go into the kitchen, like refrigerator, tea kettle, stove. Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Like, no, I don't know why I'm in here. All right, so I go back up to my bedroom, and the second I'm in my bedroom, I'm like, reading glasses. Back downstairs I go. So forgetting the reason why you walked into a room is one of the most common memory retrieval complaints I hear, right? So in the example I just gave, I had the thought, when I get into the kitchen, look for glasses. So why did that memory evaporate from my brain so quickly? And why did it fail in the kitchen and then succeed only seconds later in the bedroom? Okay, so we've all had this experience, yes? Everyone here, right? You walk into a room and like scratch your head like, why am I in here? So why does this happen to us? Well, part of the reason has to do with how terrible prospective memory is, which I just told you about. So I had the thought, when I get to the kitchen in the future, look for glasses. But to be fair, it only took me like 10 seconds to get down into the kitchen. So we're not talking about, hours, days, or significant time travel here. The bigger reason has to do with context. So memory retrieval is easier, faster, and more likely to be fully summoned when the context of retrieval matches the context that was available when the memory was created. So in the example I gave you, the memory of what I intended to get in the kitchen was created in my bedroom, surrounded by a specific context and cues. So it was bedtime, there was the book on my nightstand, there was my reading lamp, the books on the bookcase. When I got to the kitchen, there were none of those cues to tell me what it was that I was looking for. So I'm looking at the tea kettle, the stove, the refrigerator. And so what's more, these kitchen cues actually misdirect the hunt, sending me down neural pathways that lead to a meal or a cup of tea, right? Neural pathways that will not lead to leading glasses. By the way, the glasses were in there and I didn't see them. But so, right, so now I'm in a, like the ugly sister example, I'm just in a different neural neighborhood when I'm in this new room, right? Because all the cues are now attached to memories that have nothing to do with the memory of go get glasses for reading. And so it fails in the kitchen, and this is why when I go back to the bedroom and I'm surrounded by the cues that were available and related to and associated with the memory of what I planned to do, what I wanted is retrieved instantly, right? It's immediate. So the next time you walk into a room and you don't know why you're in there, don't panic. There's nothing wrong with your brain. This is normal. Go back to the room you were just in, either physically or in your mind's eye. Just use your imagination and look around. The cues should deliver to you the memory of what you wanted. Now, I should also mention that context has more to do with just sort of what's around you. It can have to do with who you were with, the weather, the time of day or year, what you're wearing. It can have to do with your internal physiological and emotional state. So we're much more likely to remember, to retrieve memories that match the mood we're in. So if you're in a good mood, you're more likely to remember the good times. And if you're really bummed out, you're more likely to remember the not so good times. If you're in a fight with your spouse, you can remember all the things you don't like about him. And when you're in love, your partner is perfect in every way. If you're studying for a test, right, or preparing for a presentation, turns out that anything that's available to you while you're studying can potentially be woven into the memory as well. So, were you hot, thirsty, tired, or stressed out when you were studying? Were you drinking a cup of coffee when you are learning vocabulary words? You'll be more likely to remember those words if you're caffeinated when you take the exam. Why would this be so? It's because anything that's available both outside of you and inside of you is potentially part of that woven neural circuit. And activation in any part of the memory can serve to activate the other parts. All right, so let me leave you with this. We use memory for pretty much everything we do, right? So because of memory, we know how to walk and talk and brush our teeth and write emails. You know where you live and your computer password, right, hopefully. You recognize the people you love. So without question, memory is an astounding superpower. But it's also highly inaccurate and fallible, especially for what happened last year, for people's names, what you plan to do later today, and if I don't have your full attention. So where does this leave us with respect to our relationship with memory, right? Because we have one. We have a relationship with memory. And I'm betting up until today, a lot of you probably didn't have a very good one because you were feeling a lot of blame and shame and worry and anxiety about it. But so what should our relationship with memory be? Like, how should we hold it? Well, here is what I think. I think that memory is a really big deal, and it's not such a big deal. I think we can take it seriously and also hold it lightly. Here's what I mean. If we consider memory to be a really big deal, then we will value the true awesomeness of our memory to take really good care of it with plenty of sleep, a heart and brain healthy diet, regular exercise, staying socially and cognitively active, and continuing to learn new things. I will go over some of that in a little bit. You will know that by using the right tools, your brain is limitless in what it can remember. At any age, you can still learn a new language, to play guitar, or all the words to the latest Taylor Swift song. But if you also consider memory to be not such a big deal, then you'll be more forgiving. This is the art of forgiving. You'll be more forgiving of your brain's many natural imperfections. So I can't remember the name of my 4th grade teacher. That's okay. 4th grade was a really long time ago at this point. I know I would know it if I saw it. Say you can't remember what you had for lunch last Thursday. That's okay. It was probably a salad. Oh, you forgot to pick up the dry cleaning. Well, that happens, especially because since you didn't have it in your calendar. So just put it in your to-do list, write it down. Oh, you can't remember the name of the movie with Sandra Bullock and the football player. Well, you'll remember it later when you stop trying, or you can just Google it now and be done with it. Did I put anyone here in a tip of the tongue state? Is there anyone like, oh, what is it? What is it? It's The Blind Side. I want you to pay attention, okay? So by not engaging in blame or a battle with our memory when it forgets, as it inevitably will, because we are human, then you'll be less stressed. And less chronic stress is good for our brains and our memories and our overall well-being. Now, there are some people out there who can memorize boggling quantities of information. There's a guy named Akira Haraguchi who, at the age of 69, he was a retired engineer from Japan, memorized over 100,000 digits of pi. I mean, right? But having a remarkable memory doesn't mean that you can remember everything. So Akira Haraguchi once forgot his wife's birthday. Right. And cellist Yo-Yo Ma, he's memorized 30 to 100,000, the sequence of 30 to 100,000 musical notes to play any one of his songs, but he also forgot his cello in the back of a taxi. So having the ability to remember a slew of information is impressive and can be useful, but it doesn't mean that you remember necessarily the day-to-day things that are important. So while we'd all agree that having an amazing memory would be helpful, and to be able to memorize things like 100,000 digits of pi would be a super neat trick, I think we'd probably all agree that being able to remember the details of our own lives is more important, right? But it can't be that important because you don't remember most of it. Our brains were not designed to remember what's routine and predictable, and most of our lives are spent doing routine, predictable things. So maybe what matters is that our brains forget everything except for what's meaningful, right? If we can just remember what's meaningful, then that gives us a sense of self, a life narrative, and the possibility for connection with others. But even if the meaningful is forgotten, memory does not define what it means to be human. So my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and she forgot pretty much everything over the course of her disease. She forgot her married name. She forgot all of her grandchildren and all 9 of her kids. I will say that being the Italian mother that she was, she did forget all of her daughters before she forgot any of her sons. It's true. Yeah, she did that. But she didn't recognize her house as her home or her face in the mirror. So I wouldn't have traded a cup of coffee for my grandmother's memory at the end of her Alzheimer's. But you don't need memory to feel the full range of human emotions. You don't need memory to love and feel loved. So I get this a lot from folks, and this is an example. A gentleman once said to me, my dad has Alzheimer's and he's at a home, and I haven't seen him in a long time. I don't go visit anymore, and I feel bad about this, but he doesn't know who I am anymore, and he won't remember that I was there, so I don't go. And I say, I get that. And just because he's not going to know who you are, and he might forget that you were there 5 minutes after you leave, but he'll remember how you made him feel, right? So if I have Alzheimer's and I forget what happened here tonight in a half an hour, it doesn't mean that this didn't matter, was meaningful, right? So the human emotion part of it doesn't rely on memory. So my grandmother, the day she died, she didn't know who any of us were, but she loved us, and we loved her, and she felt it. So take it seriously, hold it lightly. Memory isn't everything, and forgetting is a normal part of being human. Before we go to Q&A, I just want to give you a couple things, because I know that this is the next set of questions. This is almost like we need 2 talks. The next set of questions are like, well, what can we do to keep our brains and our memory healthy today? Like, what do we do to optimize it today and to decrease the likelihood of developing Alzheimer's in the future? So I'm going to give you an evidence-based list, and we're going to drill down on one, and then we can talk about some of the others if we have time in Q&A, or you can just go read my book. But so the thing I am also going to start with is everybody wants the magic pill. Everybody's like, can I just take a supplement so that I can remember everything I want to remember today and I will never get Alzheimer's in the future? And that magic pill does not exist, folks. And if someone's selling you the magic pill on the internet, they're probably being sued because it's just not legit. So here's what we know. And there's lots of studies, really well done studies, a lot of data to support what I'm about to tell you. So this is evidence-based. Your adult human brain needs 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. It needs daily exercise, a Mediterranean or mind diet, being socially connected, being cognitively active, and lowering your reactivity to chronic stress. This is to optimize the health of your memory today and to prevent it from getting Alzheimer's in the future. I want to talk about sleep, because I think that one actually stresses people out the most, and stress is bad for you. So it's because sleep plagues a lot of us for all kinds of reasons. But the data is super compelling here, so I want to go over it a little bit, and I want to give you the reasons why. Because have you all heard, yeah, I'm supposed to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, right? And are we able to do that easily all the time? Oh, good. Some people, yes, that's wonderful. I'm pretty good at it too, but like I flew here, time zone change. I haven't slept well in the last couple of nights. So, okay, so why do we need sleep for our memory today and for preventing Alzheimer's in the future? I'm going to give you 3 reasons, okay? So the first has to do with what happens while you sleep. So sleep is not an unconscious state of doing nothing, okay, right? Well, think about it. Why would animals sleep for like a third of their lives, vulnerable to predators and danger? There must be something really important going on, right? Yeah, and there is. So with respect to memory, one of the things that's going on is all of the information that you paid attention to today, everything that you cared about that was meaningful, emotional, surprising, and new for you, this talk, right, that gets woven into memory. We call it consolidation. That gets consolidated into memory while you sleep, during very specific stages of sleep. So if you don't get enough of the quality and quantity of sleep tonight, the memories of what happened today might not be fully formed tomorrow, or they might not be formed at all. So this is how you can forget some of what you wanted to remember from your days tomorrow. The second has to do with attention. So if you get a horrible night's sleep, if I got a horrible night's sleep last night, today, I'm going to have a hard time paying attention, right? I'm just like, what? I'm tired. What? And if I can't pay attention, we now know what? The first necessary ingredient in creating a memory is, attention. So I'm going to have trouble making new memories today if I didn't get enough sleep last night. The third has to do with Alzheimer's. So while we sleep, your glial system, this is the sewage and sanitation department of your brain. They wake up and get working. They do the night shift, right? So the janitors are busy in your brain sweeping away all the metabolic debris that accumulated in your brains while you were in the business of being awake. And one of the things that clears away is a protein called amyloid beta. Now, amyloid beta is a sticky protein, and if it doesn't get cleared away, it'll bind to itself and form a plaque. And it turns out that if these plaques accumulate to a certain tipping point, it then triggers a cascade of molecular events that results in what we call Alzheimer's. That's when you'll start forgetting in a way that's not normal. The good news here is that we think it takes like 10 to 20 years of amyloid plaque accumulation before it can reach that tipping point. And there's all kinds of things that we can do to lower it. It's not just like going up and up every day out of control for no reason. So the good news is we have a lot of room here and a lot of resiliency, right? So it's not like, oh, I got a bad night's sleep last night, I'm going to have Alzheimer's tomorrow. It's like, no, there's some room. And so every night you can give yourself a good night's sleep. You're clearing away amyloid. You're locking and weaving together the memories of what you cared about today, what you practiced, if you were learning pickleball, if your daughter and grandchildren came to visit, if you were studying for something, anything like that you'll be able to remember it if you get that good night's sleep. So with respect to how to get the good night's sleep, there's a guy named Matthew Walker who wrote a book called How We Sleep, which is great, I recommend. But just a couple pointers there. Caffeine. People drink coffee and tea in here. So the half-life of caffeine is anywhere between 3 and 7 hours. And it's such a wide range because we all have different natural sensitivities, receptors for that compound. But what does that mean? So if the half-life for you is 6 hours, that means 6 hours later, so if I have a cappuccino at 7 o'clock at night after dinner, there's 62 milligrams of caffeine in that cappuccino. It means 6 hours later, I'll still have 32 milligrams of caffeine buzzing around my brain at 1 in the morning? What time did I say, 7 at night? So if you're having trouble falling asleep, caffeine, if you're drinking your coffee at 2 in the afternoon or later, that caffeine might be keeping your brain from releasing the neuromodulators that make you drowsy. So if you're having trouble, back up your caffeine intake. Get off your phones earlier. You're looking into that screen, it's like staring into the sun to your brain, right? Your pineal gland's going, it's daytime, it's still daytime. And so it won't release the neuromodulators that it needs to tell your brain to go to sleep. Your room temperature needs to be lowered, your body temperature needs to get cooler to fall asleep. The last one, so I think you like me, and you're probably not going to after this. Alcohol is not helpful here. So a lot of you have probably been told that red wine is good for preventing Alzheimer's. No, 100% not been shown. Studies that were done on this were really poorly done. There's a compound in red wine called resveratrol, which is a powerful antioxidant. That's wonderful. It's also in a lot of other foods. But the amount, the amount of resveratrol that was studied in mice, not people, didn't really show much of a neuroprotective effect. It's like I don't buy it anyway. But the amount of resveratrol that would be translated into wine for you to have to drink to have the equivalent amount, you'd have to have like 40 glasses of wine. So that's not helpful. I'm so sorry. And then the alcohol. So alcohol interferes with REM sleep, a certain stage of sleep, which is important. Things are going on there. And it also might wake you up to have to pee. So just know that, maybe it helps you relax. Relaxing is good. Like, you just have to weigh these things. So if sleep is plaguing you, and it does for a lot of our lives, pregnancy and perimenopause and menopause and prostates for the gentleman, it like keeps us up through the night. Just do your best. Every night is a chance to get a good night's sleep. So it's what can I do today to help the health of my memory and to prevent Alzheimer's in the future. Thank you. So we have a microphone that will come around to anyone. I'm going to grab some water while you do that. Oh, I'm so glad I finished before that happened.
Lisa, thank you so much for traveling here.
Yeah.
And speaking of paying attention to stuff that we want to be able to remember, mindfulness training, where you teach people how to pay attention and slow down and regulate themselves inside so they can notice what's going on inside. It's good for a lot of psych problems like rage, addiction, anxiety, depression. Is there any, and the training and memory stuff, online training where you do mental games isn't very exciting results.
No.
It's good for doing games, but not for, okay, so
No.
Is there any data on mindfulness training for memory?
Yes.
Can you say anything comforting about that?
Yes, this is a wonderful question. There was like two things in there. So one is, I think a lot of you have heard, like, oh, if I do crossword puzzles, I'll never get Alzheimer's. Like, I don't know who started that. Like somebody owns stock in a crossword puzzle company. No, you're going to get really good at the crossword puzzles, but it's not like cross-training that then you'll like remember where you put your phone and you'll remember your daughter's birthday. No, and actually, you're also mostly with crossword puzzles retrieving information you already know. You're not learning new things. Like, whenever possible, what's really great for your brain is building what we call a cognitive reserve. So every time you learn something new, you're creating new neural pathways, new neural connections, and so you're building a bigger brain, actually. Anytime you learn anything new, tonight, you're welcome. So what's great about that is, like, imagine you do start to develop some Alzheimer's pathology in your brain, and like, let's just totally simplify this. Let's say you have 10 neurons. You've got, trillions of connections, by the way. Let's say you only have 10. And let's say you have Alzheimer's blocking all 10 of those. Like, now you can't remember anything, right? It's like, wow, you're done. You're like my grandmother at the very end. She didn't remember anyone or anything. Well, what if you learned a lot of new things and you built new neural connections? Let's say I built 100 new connections, and now I have 10 of them blocked. I might not even notice I have Alzheimer's, because I can detour those roadblocks, that wreckage. So that's why learning new things is a really wonderful, it's building an Alzheimer's resistant brain. With respect to mindfulness, so there's a lot of data on this. So the last one I mentioned in my list was being less reactive to stress. So stress is interesting. Like, a little bit of stress that we can handle actually helps you retrieve what you know, and it helps you learn new things. It's that kind of stress is more alertness. So like, for me, I needed to be awake and like care about this, and it's not stress in like the maladaptive way, but it's like, I'm ready, right? Like, if I'm driving my car and the person slams on their brakes in front of me, I can stop the car because I'm alert and I'm reacting to that in a way that's healthy. And the healthy way is that, like, if something happens, I'm presented with something dangerous or threatening, and I've got to slam on the brakes. We go through the fight or flight response, and it's supposed to be a quick on, quick off. So adrenaline, cortisol come on, heart rate accelerates, breathing accelerates, I react in the moment. I don't think, by the way. Your frontal cortex, your thinking brain, shuts off, because it's not like, well, should I run away from the lion or should I stay? Like, let me weigh all of the choices. It's like, just go, right? So it's like you react, and then it's over. Cortisol actually goes back to your brain and shuts off It shuts the switch off. It's the shut-off valve. And so you don't release any more adrenaline and cortisol. Now you're back to baseline. And that's okay for memory. For chronic stress, and by the way, it's not lions today, and like the car stopping short does a single thing, but our thoughts are our modern day predators. So we're worrying about the past, we're worrying about the future, we're unconscious a lot of all of these thoughts running through us, and it's what if this and what if that, and da-da-da, and oh, I can't believe she said that, and he did that, and da-da-da-da-da, and oh, the news, and on and on and on. And that's hijacking our fight or flight system, and we don't even know it, okay? And so when this happens, when we're chronically stressed and we're reacting to it, and right, your shoulders are up by your ears and you're breathing really shallow and fast, the shutoff valve breaks. So what I mean by that is that the receptors become downregulated or they become desensitized, and so cortisol's there, but it's like brain isn't able to react to it, and so the loop doesn't get shut off, and you just keep dumping more adrenaline and cortisol, and in that state you can't retrieve memories you've already made, and you have a hard time remembering new things. So if you've ever been too stressed for an exam and you show up and you just choke, you can't remember anything, right? You ever go to give a speech and you blank, or if you're just in a very stressful situation in your household or life, and it's just you feel like you can't remember things well. So chronic stress is really bad for our memory creation and retrieval. And so we know that mindfulness studies have shown us, like for example, if you are chronically stressed and we put you in an MRI machine, your hippocampus, this is the part of your brain that is responsible for weaving the memories, is actually shrunken. If you're under chronic stress, you've got a smaller hippocampus. It can look like you have Alzheimer's, unless you meditate. And then it'll prevent that from happening, or if you meditate after, the good news is you can restore the size of your hippocampus. So through neurogenesis, you actually can create more neurons in certain parts of your brain throughout life. So meditation can really help restore that shutoff valve. We know that happens, that people who meditate regularly do not end up with that fight or flight being hijacked and broken. So it's really powerful. And so a daily meditation practice is wonderful for being less reactive to stress, because the world's going to continue to be crazy out there. But what can we do to get less hijacked to it? So daily meditation is great. I also give people this, for those of you who aren't regular meditators, and meditation, by the way, you're not trying to not think. You're trying to notice your thoughts. Every time you notice that you're thinking, you just did it. Like, oh my God, you're aware of the thought. And then that goes away. And then the next one comes, oh, I was aware of that one too. Because a lot of times they're just running us, and then the adrenaline and cortisol, because the thoughts aren't nice a lot of the times. They're worried, or they're critical and judgmental and scared and anxious. And if that's what's going through you and your thoughts, it's creating a physiology that is wrecking your ability to remember, among other things. So it's not really a meditation, it's more of a breathing exercise, but here's a 9-second meditation breathing exercise that I tell folks to use in your day-to-day lives. If you notice that you're like this, maybe you caught hold of a thought and you're like, oh my God, I'm not even here. I am like, I'm 20 years ago, or I'm wherever I am. If you can close your eyes, because that quiets a lot of your brain. Our brains there's so much devoted to vision. Bless you. If you can close your eyes, and if you can't, that's okay, but close your eyes. Breathe in through your nose to the count of 4. Hold it for 1 second, and then breathe out through your nose to the count of 4. And then notice how you feel. Because here's the thing, if you are running for your life from a predator or a dangerous situation, whether that's a thought or an actual car braking in front of you, you are never breathing slowly in and out through your nose. Right? So while our thoughts and the dangerous situations can affect our physiology, we can kind of flip that around too. By breathing slowly in and out through your nose, you are informing your physiology that you are safe. And it can quiet down in response. So thank you for that question. Mindfulness is a wonderful way to be in touch with the physiology of your body, which will affect your ability to remember. Yes?
Can you make a comment of the so-called memory enhancers like Prevagen and the placebo effect?
It's BS. The question was about memory enhancers like Prevagen. It's upsetting to me. And the folks I know who are about educating and really helping, those companies prey on people's fears and the vulnerability of folks who, might be with a loved one with Alzheimer's and who are aging in a way that feels scary to them, and it's really upsetting. Those companies are all getting sued. They're making claims that they're not real. They haven't been able to prove they do what they say they do. So it's not sexy what I'm telling you to do for your brains. It's like, oh, I need to sleep and eat healthy food and exercise every day and do some meditation and learn new things and interact with people. Like, that's going to help. But we have the data to show that it does. And a lot of those things are kind of, free in comparison to the supplements. I mean, you have to buy your food and stuff. But, yeah, no, BS, sorry. Yeah.
Hi, so I know that we're talking about difficulties with memory. I'm kind of curious about the opposite end of that. So some of these people have just like these steel trap memories. Is there something fundamentally different about those people?
So it's interesting. There's so much fun here. And again, I encourage you to read my book or listen to the book. So a couple of answers here. There are people in the world who have something called highly superior autobiographical memory. Call them HSAM, because that was a lot. And there's only been like 100 in the world who've been identified. Mary Lou Henner, the actress, do you guys remember her from Taxi? She's one of them, and I interviewed her and got to know her in doing the research for this book. But these people can remember the details of every day of their lives from, say, age 10, 11, 12 on. And you can't stump them. It's like all right, Mary Lou, it's like, August 1st, 1986. She's like, well, I was, driving up the coast with Johnny Travolta, and da-da-da-da, and I did this and that. And this happened in the news, and this was the weather, and you could look it up, and it's like, yeah, that's what happened. So these folks have 9 brain regions that are enlarged compared to us regular people. But we don't know if they're enlarged and it caused this, or they're enlarged because they have this. So it's really not well understood. The people like Akira Haraguchi, who could memorize 100,000 digits of a patternless, non-repeating number, or anyone, like if you wanted to memorize your grocery list, say you had 12 things on your grocery list and you don't want to write it down. The way he did that, and like these memory champions who can memorize a deck of cards, they make it meaningful by creating a story around it. So, each number means something, or sounds like with Akira Haraguchi, it's like it's a phrase. So each number is a phrase that he can weave into a very long story that he memorizes. So with the deck of cards, each number is, I think, there's a book called Moonwalking with Einstein, and I talked to that author, Joshua Foer, and he was a journalist studying these memory champions, and he was so fascinated with it, he he stopped being a journalist for a while, and he just trained to be a memory champion. And to memorize cards, he talked about how each number is a person doing something to something. So each card is like, Oprah Winfrey giving a gift to this person in the front row. I don't know, it's like, Abby Wambach kicking a soccer ball to, he has it mean something. So it's so much easier for us this is how we know language, right? So if I just gave you all the letters to my name, not in order, that would be hard for you to memorize those, dozen letters. But if it's spelled out, Lisagenova, you're like, that's Lisa Genova. Means something. So the people who memorize massive things, they turn that information into something that's meaningful, emotional, surprising, or new. The Joshua Foer thing also, I'm not giving great examples off the top of my head, but he's like the more disgusting or creepy or surprising or sexual or taboo that you could make these cards, like, whoa, you remember that stuff way more than if it's just like Abby kicking a soccer ball. So yeah, like you make it juicy in some way and then you remember it because it's surprising. Yes?
Usually I don't get one. You've mentioned Alzheimer's several times, and you also mentioned that there was a drug now to treat it, but it's new. There are other types of dementia that have names, like aphasia. Do they have the same type of drugs, and do they have the same effects as Alzheimer's?
Right, so there are a lot of cousins of Alzheimer's, just in that they present with similar set of symptoms. So not being able to produce words with aphasia, or not being able to remember. So like there's frontotemporal lobe dementia, there's Lewy body dementia, there's vascular dementia. These all have different biological causes, and so a lot of them, they don't have the same etiology, the same amyloid plaque building up causing neurofibrillary tangles and neuroinflammation and cell death. That's not the pathway for aphasia. Aphasia is often caused by a stroke. Frontotemporal lobe and Lewy body, they have different molecules involved, and unfortunately they're less studied than Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's, we do have a couple of drugs that have been approved by the FDA just this past year, which is super exciting. On the one hand, we haven't had anything disease-modifying for Alzheimer's ever. And so the wonderful thing about the two drugs that have been approved is that it proves that this amyloid hypothesis, this amyloid strategy for interfering with Alzheimer's is a good one, and it's valid. The drugs are not a home run. So right now, they cost, Medicare is covering some of the costs, but they still cost like $26,000 a year. You have to be on them early, and it's twice a month infusion, so you have to go to a medical facility to have the treatment. So this is not the pill that we want. What we want is for it to be like a statin. So for heart disease, if you at any age, say, you're in your 30s, and you go for your annual physical and you get blood drawn and you get your blood pressure taken, and they say, oh, your cholesterol's high, your blood pressure's high, you're at risk for heart disease. So we want you to do some things lifestyle. We want you to eat a Mediterranean or mind diet, exercise, all the things I'm telling you that are, everything that's good for your heart health is good for your brain health. So you're gonna do all those things, and I'm gonna give you a pill called a statin to lower your cholesterol levels so you don't end up with plaques that will then cause you to die of a heart attack later in life. Similarly with Alzheimer's, what we're imagining is, we don't want to treat you when you've got full-blown Alzheimer's because, think of amyloid plaques, like they're rising to that tipping point, and this is in my TED Talk if you want to go deeper into this, but think of those as a lit match. And so you've got those amyloid plaques rising, there's the lit match, and if they reach the tipping point, it's going to set fire to your brain. Okay? So the drugs that are in development for Alzheimer's blow out the match. But if my brain's already on fire, it didn't do any good to blow out that match, right? So I gotta get to you and treat you before you're symptomatic for Alzheimer's. So ideally, these drugs, it's we're at the beginning, which is very exciting. They will get better. They will formulate the drug so that eventually it'll be a pill that people will take preventatively. For these other cousins of Alzheimer's, they're so much less studied, and it's just we're further away from a medical treatment for those. It's like I wrote a book about Huntington's disease, which only has about 40,000 people in the US who have it. It's called an orphan disease because drug companies aren't highly motivated to spend the time and resources to solve it because the market potential isn't big enough, right? If Alzheimer's has 6 million people in the US, they're like, ooh, there's lots of money there. 40,000, so it doesn't have, the research doesn't, we don't have the critical massive research. So with the aphasias and the frontotemporal dementias, they're just further behind for that reason. Yeah. Yes. No, sorry.
I'm a physician here in town, and we treat a lot of concussions, as you might imagine, with that beautiful ski hill you see and all the mountain biking we do. And I'm curious, what happens to your brain during a concussion to prevent you from having that memory?
Yeah.
And why are multiple concussions associated with increased risk for dementia?
Yeah, these are good questions. So one of the, and I don't know everything about concussions, but I actually know with respect to memory. So anyone who's had for a lot of people who've had a concussion, like if you get knocked on the football field, or the example I use in the book is Trevor Rees-Jones, Princess Diana's bodyguard, who still can't remember, what happened leading up to the accident. You tend not to remember. So if you've been concussed, you can remember like what happened maybe, yesterday or that morning, but you won't remember anything for like a period of time leading up to what happened, and then just after. And this is because the hippocampus goes offline, is the best way I can say it. So the hippocampus is the part of your brain that is going to say, oh, the sight, the sound, what he said, how I felt about it, weave all that together. That's the memory of what happened. And it, like when someone goes blackout drunk, the hippocampus goes offline. It's like, nope, it's not. If you did a functional MRI, if you did a PET scan, like it's not, the hippocampus is not working during that window of time. It's just shut off. The dementia risk is, so when your amyloid plaques increase to that tipping point, and then it triggers something called neurofibrillary tangles. So the highway system in your neurons that transports the necessary machinery and proteins and neurotransmitters and neuromodulators from the nucleus all the way to the end. So like, from my spinal cord to my big toe, or from my visual cortex to how I feel about what I saw. Anywhere that needs to go, they travel down a highway that gets tangled up by these neurofibrillary tangles. So the communication gets jammed. And then when that happens, your brain's trying to things are going badly, go in and try and fix it. But it makes it worse, and you end up with a lot of cytokines and neuroinflammation, and then you get apoptosis and cell death. With what happens after many concussions, and I don't think we collectively know, I know that I don't know, but what we see in the brains is we don't see the amyloid plaques, we just see tangles. So it's like something about the repeated concussion causes that highway system to get all, for the tangles to happen, and then you get neuroinflammation and cell death. So some of the research that's being done for Alzheimer's that is focusing further on, so like a lot of the research is focused on amyloid, blowing out the match, but some of it is, well, how could we keep tau, the protein that becomes tangled in a neurofibrillary tangle, from tangling? How can we prevent neuroinflammation from happening? So all of these downstream areas of research for Alzheimer's could then translate to the folks with the tangles from concussion, and then possibly from things like Parkinson's and ALS as well, with those have neuroinflammation. Yeah. We got some in the front row. Oh, we go over here.
A couple quick questions. Have you done any research on naps and how they give the brain a chance to maybe build like the structure or whatever of what's happened so far, or
yes,
a chance
naps.
to relax and regroup? Could you speak to naps?
Yeah. So, and this is in the book in more detail too. I don't mean to be pimping my book so much, but it's in there in case I don't. If you want more, it's definitely going to be in there. So, this has been studied a lot by people other than me, and the period of time that seems to be the sweet spot for naps is 20 minutes. Longer than that, you can end up with like this lethargy and inertia where you feel actually cognitively foggier. But 20 minutes seems to be enough time. One of the things we think that happens during a nap The studies have been done that have compared people who napped and didn't nap, and that if you're trying to learn a lot of information, that during that 20-minute nap, the hippocampus can kind of weave some of it together and offload that there can be, the hippocampus doesn't like, it can max out. If you're trying to learn a lot all at once, if you're cramming for a test, it can weave it together, and now it's a memory circuit that doesn't have to involve your hippocampus anymore, and now you can add more things in. So the studies of, this is a lot, no one's asked this question, I don't think ever, but I did write about it. So yes, 20-minute nap. Daniel Pink, do any of you read him? He wrote a book, he called it a nappuccino. He says if you drink a little caffeine, and again, don't do this in the afternoon or later because it could keep you from falling asleep at night, but say like early afternoon, little caffeine, and then go to sleep. The caffeine doesn't actually hit your system for about 20 minutes. So he's like, what you do is do your shot of espresso, go to sleep. 20 minutes later, you wake up, and the caffeine kicks in. Woo! Oh, and I didn't mean to totally villainize caffeine here. So as long as you're consuming your caffeine early enough in the day that it doesn't interfere with your ability to fall asleep, caffeine actually helps your memory by helping you pay attention. Yeah, so that's one of the things caffeine does, is a stimulant. It helps you focus and pay attention. And so by way of paying attention, you're able to make memories. So caffeine can really help. And a 20-minute nap.
And then as a follow-up to what you just said, if you have no trouble falling asleep, if you have evening screen time or red wine, if it doesn't affect your ability to fall asleep, does it affect your ability for the brain to go into the different stages of sleep that are essential to clean out the plaque and all that?
The wine, yes. Alcohol will interfere with stages of sleep without you being aware of it. The caffeine is the screen. No, not that we know of. Definitely not the caffeine. I don't know. The screen time is interesting because, like, is it making you angry? Are you, like, scrolling through the news before bed? Like, maybe you fall asleep, but I don't know what you're dreaming. Like, it could be really anxiety-provoking and maybe not as restful of a night's sleep as if you were, I don't know, just doing the calm nap or something. Yes. Okay. Yes.
This one is two kind of short questions. One, is there such a thing as a photographic memory where you think, oh my gosh, I have to read down this page because I know in the third paragraph I'll find the answer I want? And then the second one, I just saw this, that it said if you're studying for something and reading and you really want to remember it, if you make a fist while you're reading, it will help improve. And just having listened to you today, is that something of giving the attention to the process? Or is it just another Prevagen hooey?
Okay. The line on photographic memories is that that's not real. There are some savants out there that for certain things seem to have a photographic memory. Like there's a man with autism who can look at a cityscape, like the New York City skyline, and then draw it accurately. So we don't understand how someone does that, but for 99-point-something% of the population, no, we do not have photographic memories. That's not how, for information, that's not how information works. And for the memory what happened, never for what happened, okay? You might be able to look at a page and have it memorized very accurately, but your memories for what happened are always wrong. They are. Again, read the book. But so the memory for what happened is always a story, okay? This is really why we don't remember much from like our earliest years, like, 0, 1, 2, and 3, because we didn't have the language yet to tell the story of what happened. So you might have like little snapshot moments, but you don't have like the full, the full season. You might have like episodes, like a moment from each, like a couple of episodes, but not like the full season. But yeah, the memories for what happened are wrong because it's a story, And it's vulnerable to editing, and it's vulnerable, like every time you retell a story of what happened, if you add something new, like, because you're connecting information together. There's what happened, but, well, by the way, in terms of what happened, I can only remember what I paid attention to. So if it's Christmas morning that I'm remembering from when I was 12, I'm gonna remember that day differently than my brother, right, who is 10, and he cared about the Hulk and Legos, and I don't care at all about the Hulk. Like, he's gonna remember, right, whoever you're in the room with. This is why, like, your siblings might disagree about what happened on Thanksgiving, or like so you can only remember what you pay attention to, and then you're gonna tell the story about it. And every time you retell it, you store that new version over the old one. The old one's gone. And so it's like the telephone game. You can drift further and further away from what you actually encoded in the first place. So no one has a photographic memory for what happened, for sure. Yeah, oh, the fist. I'm like, what else did you ask me? The fist. That's weird. So, like, if you're trying to remember anything you're studying, again, anything you can do to give you more hooks. So if you're thinking about a memory as like nodes in a neural circuit, right? You want to attach as many things as you can. So if I can wrap a meaningful, weird, surprising, emotional story around what I'm learning, right? Like if it's a word, like can I create a sentence with that word that's funny or that rhymes or make it a song? Or, you know, he's adding a little bit of choreography to, like, if you think like, oh, I'm gonna like do this every time I don't know, like he's adding a choreography, but I don't know about the fist. Are you just supposed to feel like angry about this word you're learning, or like fight? I don't know. If it had something to do with it, like I know in memorizing a talk, I know sometimes there are certain gestures I know I'm going to use when I move on to a new section. Like if there's a jump I'm making and maybe it's not intuitive to know exactly where to go next so I don't get stuck, I'll add a gesture so that helps me know, like, I'm moving this way when I say that. So the more that you can add to the memory of what you're trying to remember. So if there's a smell, if there's a body movement, if there's something silly, oh, that reminds me of my Uncle Matt. Like anything that like you can relate it to you that makes you feel something about it, it means something, it will help. But I don't know about the fist. It's weird. All right. Thank you so much. I loved being here. Thank you, thank you.
I appreciate it. Oh, yeah, it worked. Well, he
song in my head, it was all that I had. Hope was a letter I never could send. Well, love was a country we couldn't defend. Through the carnival, we watched them go round and round. All we knew of home was just a sunset and some clowns. Oh, well, you were a magazine, I was a plain Jane, just walking the sidewalks covered in rain. Love to just get into some of your stories.